Hello and welcome to Industry Spotlight with Creative First. Our guest today is Biren Ghosh, Country Head Technicolor India and Global XCOM member Technicolor Creative Studios. Biren is a thought leader and an industry evangelist featuring in all major content markets and events across the globe for over 22 years. He's a futurist and strategist and recognized by government and industry as a mentor and a visionary. He has helped build global recognition for the Indian AVGC industry. He has served as a national task force member to help ideate with the national AVGC policy for India in 2022-23. During his tenure at Technicolor, its brands and their clients have won over 8 Emmy Awards for TV animation, 4 Academy Awards, 24 Cannes Lions, 28 VES, 4 BAFTAs, and several British Arrows. He's a chairman for CII's National AVGC Committee and has previously served on the committees of NASSCOM, FICCI, and ABAI. Biren has received the National Order of Merit, a knighthood conferred on him by the President of France. He has also been awarded the Global Asian of the Year 2021, presented by ET Asia One. He's a multifaceted personality and has a passion for art, music, and photography. Biren, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Lohita. That was a mouthful, and it kind of reminds me that the best should lie ahead. So we'll go from there. But a pleasure to be at Creative First. I think of myself as Creative First. So great to be on a platform that kind of echoes my own feelings about why I'm in this industry.
Biren, what are the recent trends and developments in the AVGC industry?
So I'd like to start by saying that it depends where you see them from. So we have something in our industry called aerial perspective, and it's part of our toolbox. And basically, when you dilute any intensity by blending it with white, it mimics atmosphere. So that's why when you see things from a distance, colors change. You might have noticed in all the imagery that you see that distant hills look normally a little blue or purplish. So I'll start, and that's every answer deserves a quirky first, so I started from there. But more seriously, I'd like to first of all, for people that are tuning in and don't know what AVGC is, in fact, nobody in the world knows it. We use the abbreviation when we were creating the first policy for Bangalore and Karnataka. But it's animation, visual effects, games, and comics. And over time, over this last decade, the A and the V and the G and the C have all mushroomed and become large entities on their own. They have different touch points. But for the purpose of this conversation, there's an underlying layer of skill sets and talent and tools and technologies that are common. So I'm going to use AVGC since you brought it up. I think the trend that we have been able to successfully establish is that India is now an intrinsic part of the global value chain when it comes to producing animation and visual effects. This was not ordinarily the case. You had to sell India quite a lot when we went to markets, ANSI, VES summits, FMX, MIPCOM, MIPTV, all of the markets. We had to kind of present why India. Because both then and now, we are a really small percentage of the global production story. But we've established ourselves as being a player. We were often seen as a back-end provider. It's a term I absolutely hate. Who wants to talk about the posterior of anything? But in the case of our industry, we have progressed from performing the simpler skills, and there are usually many, many skills in every frame of film that you make in the digital world, to creating high-end, end-to-end, world-class computer graphics across the AVGC landscape. So I want to begin by saying that we've taken our space, taken our seat at the global value chain in a similar way that the IT industry began to do many, many years ago. And if people say that we only do rotoscopy or match and move, etc., that's a myth. It is true that in those skills, we have probably 70-80% of the world's work done here. And in the end-to-end, high-end stuff, where Technicolor Creative Studios has been a major pioneer, Now, many of the studios from all over the world are in India as well. In these areas, we still have overall probably 2% or so of the world market. So imagine that we have in the simpler skills a complete domination of the world market. But in this progression of time, let's look at 2 years, 5 years, 7 years from now, we have to do in the higher end skill sets what we've done in Roto and Match Move and Paint and the similar ones. So I'd like to start from there. We as a company have also demonstrated that India can scale. The other trend is that India can scale. So when we talk about the simpler skill sets, there are many, many, many studios, the length and breadth of India, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, 20 people, 10 people, 50 people, 150 people. But at Technicolor, I've been here for 14 years and a bit. And during that time, we went from 300 people to, at our peak before the strike, to almost 7,300 people. And that shows you that we can manage scale in India in a similar fashion to much larger industries than ourselves. So imagine that at the mill in India, we are part of this global ecosystem that delivers over 3,000 short films to advertising, to experiential, to all kinds of very exciting venues. The latest being the Sphere in Las Vegas, where we did the imagery for the opening concert of U2 and Bono on stage. And we had the imagery look like very appropriately like a Diwali fireworks. But that was the Elvis Presley archive that we had to mine and create that on a screen that is 16K by 16K. And you can imagine how pixel perfect it had to be for that purpose. So moving on from there, if you look at what we do at MPC, which is visual effects for film and television, and everyone knows last year, one of the tent poles was Top Gun Maverick and Elvis and The Little Mermaid. And this year it's Transformers and a bunch of other movies. Pinocchio got us fabulous awards, winning the VES and winning, the Academy's accolades. But there again, 20 films, 25 films a year, 20 TV series like The House of Dragons and everything else. It's difficult to pinch ourselves. Sometimes you have to pinch ourselves to realize that this is make in India or made in India for the world. And that trend, I think, is topical from the purpose for the point of this conversation. So we, I think, need now to look at a further getting together to build India as a larger, more agile platform, because technologies change, expectations change, genres have multiplied, as you know from the conversations you would have had with the streamers, that they've opened up a whole new Pandora's box where it's not necessarily actor or actress first. It's director driven, it's story driven, it's geography driven. We watch Korean shows, they watch Indian shows, and so on and so forth. I think the trends in this industry are as follows. In animation, you're going to see more computer graphics driven stuff. You're going to see this in a way where the larger studios are going to look at a simpler, perhaps a more economical way of creating world-class content, not only by geography, because we're here, but in terms of the way in which they need to do much more than the little niche that animation occupied out of the larger live action pie for all of filmmaking. And I think the moonshots ahead for animation and visual effects is really all about the development of skills and talents and tools. And all of those three things can happen here. It remains, in spite of all the technology innovation, it remains front and center, a talent game and a human game. And we'll come to more of that, I think, as this conversation progresses.
That's incredible. A key aspect of the AVGC policy recently has been the initiative to enhance incentives and promote original IPs. Could you tell us more about these incentives and what is the expected impact from this?
We experience what the world does because we're a service provider to the AAA titles and games. We're a service provider to hundreds of brands that we do those 3,500 pieces of work. We work with three of the biggest studios to produce animation. We work with multiple directors, cinematographers in the new triangle between director, visual effects supervisor, and cinematographer in the emerging computer graphics-driven world. where movies are made in front, inside, and behind the camera. There are incentives that have made countries and cities stand together and face up to the might of much larger economies. So the whole incentive story started in France and in Canada and in many other places, and Korea, to develop an industry in order otherwise to would not be able to stand up to Hollywood. And those incentives serve a purpose, but people need to be creative first. And you can't give incentive to something that doesn't have the potential to be a success, because no matter how much money you throw at it, it won't work. I would respectfully talk about the Indian film industry that I'm a great fan of, to say that the success rate there is really small. And without any incentives, we make 800, 900,000 movies in a year. So incentives don't create volume. Incentives don't create quality, but incentives help you in order to catapult or leapfrog certain deficiencies, and they should act as a, if you like, a help to intermediate the steps where someone gets stuck, because in a treaty in a foreign country they'll have funds available as well, but on this side of the treaty the funds may not be available. So it might help to equalize certain imbalances and give people a much better global connect. On the IP side, intellectual property is a trial and error, and people that become very successful, large studios, large game publishers, people that are going to do work successively and build franchises, the success comes through iteration. The success comes through iteration. The success comes by having distribution. The success comes by being listeners more than tellers. Successful content, if anyone's ever worked in marketing or advertising, is to have the insights of the consumer for that particular product and make your content so that it hits into the heart and head of that consumer. It's no different for movies. And no different for streaming channels. So effectively, when all of us have been part of companies that are producers, you will only catch the wind provided that you are giving something to someone that they want to consume, right? It's very simple. And so where I think we need to put our money, our time, and our resource is in the development stage of content. I would rather see monies that are given to assist iterations, creating 3, 4, 5 ideas, and then having someone take one of those ideas. And by the way, you'll always find money for that winning idea. But you will not find money for the iterations that you need to make. So when you see a large studio or a large game publisher come out with a new title, they probably junked 1, 2, 3 or more titles. They probably worked on iterations of that same title where they change characters, they change scripts, they've changed many, many things around it, even talent sometimes, in order to make sure that the recipe that they're taking to bake or to make in that final version is road tested, is actually what they believe is going to be successful. The failure rate amongst global studios producing a big game, producing a big movie, and producing a TV series, because so much money goes into it, has to amortize 3 or 4 or 5 different things that they junked for $10,000 or $50,000 or $200,000, because you don't want to make a movie for several tens of millions of dollars that you really haven't put through that mill. And I believe that our IP story in India will not take off until we can make that happen. And therefore, in the AVGC segment, apart from G, and I'll come to that later, apart from G, the A and the V are very much about the services story. 75 to 77% of all of our revenues come from being a global delivery model in that global value chain that I talked about earlier. And once you do that and you generate monies, and your skill sets are able to do world-class quality production, the people who've been doing the kind of stuff that we do are the right people then to even work on your IP. You start with a small budget, you start without having the iterations, you start without road testing the idea, and then you don't have this world-class quality of talent working on it, you're actually not setting yourself up for success. If you add incentives to that, you're just basically getting funding to make a dish that we said is not ready to go into the production of. And that's why I think, like in other forms of IP creation, let's say technology, you need to be able to create experimentation until you think you have the formula, until you think you have the perfect code that will actually be successful. And it's been consumer tested, it's been peer tested, it's been distributor tested, etc., etc. And then you'll be able to attract, the people that can make this happen. So on the IP side, it's not been very easy, right? If you look at, for example, the IT industry, they've been talking about product for many, many, many years, and they are far more well endowed when it comes to reserves and financial ability and clout and heft, and it's still something that is picking up in its own pace and its own time. And I think we'll go through a very, very similar journey. But let's celebrate the fact that we can get more jobs, we can have more foreign exchange, we can make sure that we are able to kind of take our folks and our abilities to world class. And I think the IP story will always find funding. The government's attempt to do this applies to services as well as the IP creation of original content. And I think you're going to see that the return on the incentives that they provide will be easier pickings in the area of services and co-productions, which is basically taking a share of an IP by putting in your work. You get a little bit of money, you might get some territories, you might get some rights, you might get some back end. I think that would be the graduation. It's not going to go directly into the whole IP story where a government is going to take a punt on it, because ultimately they have to have a fund and they have to give that across many different projects. And I think that we are going to see the utilization of that in a very meaningful way. But the incentives by the government for creation of content is only one part of the basket of incentives. The others would be to create infrastructure, for example, through a national center of excellence where everyone, small, medium, and large, can come in and plug and play. WeWorks may not be the right phrase today, but a co-working space for infrastructure. So, Lohita, you and 3 other people with a great idea want to come in, either develop or produce something, don't have to buy the computers, don't have to buy the software, don't have to have a data center, don't have to have storage, don't have to have bandwidth. Come there, pay by the slice, work for 2 weeks, work for 2 months, work for 2 years, pay per use, and you're out. And then you need to go and take a break because you don't have your next idea ready to start production the day after you release the previous one. And therefore, that's the catch. That's where we've had a lot of blood loss. That's where we've had a lot of cost that's disappeared into the woodwork, because we are treating an industry that will make one project and then another project and then another project as if it was a BPO, where something has to happen every single day. So rents, hardware, software, standing still costs of talent are things that the AVGC industry has carried that burden for the last 15 or 20 years. And 2 or 3 months of being idle will take away all the money that you made in the other 7 or 8 or 9 months, which has been the high mortality of studios. But as talent becomes more prolific, more available, skill sets get more refined, the model that we have in film and the model in live action film, the model we have in live action television will also become the model in the AVGC industry. So Yash Raj, for example, as a studio and many others like them, will bring a crew together depending on the movie that they have. We'll have a core team that is inside, but we'll have different talent, different light boys and different cameramen and different set of cinematographers and different people coming on a bespoke team, cast and curate for that particular project. And then they'll go away, maybe call back for a sequel. But that's how the global industry works. And I think that's the next emergence of what we should look forward to and help curate for the AVGC industry. I'd like to just end on the G part of it, which is gaming. Gaming has been very different in its growth and evolution in the last 4 to 6 years, because games happened as a result of distribution. What is that distribution? Basically, what happened to games is that they discovered this piece of equipment, and it gets better and better and better. I would never have imagined that this piece in my hand, I would spend as much money as I've spent on it, right? In the old days, I would probably buy a motorcycle for that much.
Right.
But today, the quality of this device has given birth to the fact that while India could not afford the consoles and then putting up a big screen and playing the AAA titles across the length and breadth of the country for cost reasons, they could not necessarily afford high-end PCs with massive, computing power and graphic cards and so on and so forth. The mobile did it for them, and therefore you found out there is a proliferation of all types of mobile games, right? So whether you say free to play, pay to play, real money, I mean, there are so many flavors of the gaming industry that we didn't even have in film and television after 50 years, right? And all of this is finding its own place, and it's finding its own universe. But what will happen here? And I mean this proactively, and again with great respect, is that everyone is running to create hundreds of titles and throw them against the wall, hoping that some of them will stick. So we will see a natural success rate in a pyramid, that some guys will come to the top. And we know now that in each of these areas that we talk about in games, there are already a few front runners who are seriously funded, seriously built communities, have a revenue stream, have profitability. Couple of listed companies have taken place in the last few years that demonstrate, yes, for the real guys, there is real money in a business sense, real revenue to be had in terms of what they do. So the gaming story happened because pre-COVID we had 350-400 million gamers on mobile. Then it went up to 650 or so on. But I think the quality of what they get, and sports is a very important part of that, and so are other games. It could be things that in my time you had to buy a cardboard, and you had to have two dice, and you had to put something on it, and mom played it with you. But in the world of today's games, I'm not sure how many moms and kids do that together. That's kind of the gaming story. That's why it went a different direction. So it's very much a local business. Few companies like us at a very high end are niche, because we do that for the biggest game publishers in the world. We create the Grand Theft Auto 5, Red Dead Redemption, FIFA, and lots of other stuff, which is very, very high end in terms of the quality of the cinematic and the quality of the art and animation. And I think there's a scope for that to grow as well. And the success of what we do, as these companies move up from mobile to more sophisticated games, I think the excellence that we have learned in working with big global AAA titles will be able to influence the quality of art and animation for the guys who create IP locally. So that's a little bit of it may sound all over the place, but I'm trying to give you a world tour, of the AVG landscape, and you can see how different they are from each other.
Given that the industry is a skill-based one, what are the steps being taken to ensure that existing talent is not just upskilled, but new talent is also brought into the ecosystem to service the potential increase in demand?
So there is a lot happening on the talent front. And as much as I can say there's a lot happening, too little is happening on this front. Because we have I'm going to lean back a little bit. 300 pages just released, M&E sector potential in India, but 50 pages summarize what's the skill gap. So we've worked really hard at many levels in order to, and by the way, I came back this morning from a skills council meeting by the government of Karnataka with the Minister of IT and the Minister of Skills both present with. And this is the industry we're in, right? There's Accenture in the room, Wipro in the room, Schneider in the room, everyone out there talking about the gap. In the AVGC industry, we have a gap of around 160,000 people a year. And that gap is at the overall level. At the niche in which we perform, maybe that's about 10 to 25% of that. So when we said that we are 2% or 3% of the world market, let's take 2 as a number, we would easily be able to go to 3 or 4 if we could have the talent to produce it. And so we will be constrained by talent. I'd like to break talent into 2 or 3 different categories. Of course, there is the artistic talent. And every frame of film requires very, very different skill sets, right? From the pre-visualization to the modeling, to texturing, to rigging, to animation, to lighting, to compositing, to rendering, etc. So if we are making something, for example, at MPC on a big film, like a Napoleon or any of the movies that have just come out, we almost have to create 14 different departments, which are centers of excellence that influence every frame of film. So what we've done is, we've first of all come out with a way to test this. So if Lohita wants to come and join us, she wants to do some animation, and we give her a test. Based on her ability, we will help to stream her either into a modeler or a animator or a lighting artist. And that's the artistic area of skills. I'll come back to this. The next area is production management. How do you do workforce planning? How do you make this happen? Because if you have, how many frames there are in one film, and if every frame has 14 different departments that are inputting into that, can you imagine the complexity of what you have to produce on a schedule, to be sent somewhere else, to be approved by someone, and then either you do it again or it gets approved? That is massively complex. There are tools to do it, there are technologies to do it, but at the end of it, you need people who can make sure that they can interact with the creative and with the artist community and get that done, to perfection on time. And in the old days, you used to hear, oh, I don't think India can keep to time. Oh, I don't think India is good at delivery. Oh, I think India says yes when they haven't figured out how to say, to say no. It's because it's difficult to understand this unless you really are set up to do it really well. And for anyone that has to scale like we do, that complexity becomes, manifold in its complexity. So back to the third set of things, which we don't have here. When we create computer graphic production, there are things that should not seem unnatural to you, but it's extremely difficult to create fur and groom and hair and water and snow and stuff like that, right? Explosions. So we, as a company, of course, maybe have a couple of 100 developers as a part of a larger global team that writes software and has to create these tools on top of proprietary, on top of off-the-shelf stuff that you might get, or in certain areas, completely proprietary stuff. That gives you the edge. So if you see in The Lion King and you see, the lion on Pride Rock and you see the mane blowing in the wind, it has to be absolutely natural. And you can't do that, unless you have the right technology and the software to do that. And that changes, every few years. When we create a Godzilla that has to knock off about half a dozen buildings, the way those buildings crumble should be exactly the way that they would have happened in real life. Otherwise, the believability from a point of view of an audience would not be there. Say, okay, that looks a bit fake. So hopefully, nothing that we do in a movie is apparent to you or anyone who sees it, because if it does, then we fail. That's the skill set that I think needs to develop in all these 3 areas: the artistic area, the management of the artistry, and the tool sets that obviously need to get better and better. So the global, if you like, fight to who finishes first amongst all of us at the top end, the upper echelons of this business, is that when they make the next whatever, the next Pirates of the Caribbean, the next James Bond movie, the next whatever, we can go and tell them why the tool set that we now have is going to make that bigger, bolder, better, etc. And I think when you see anything that's made over 12 years, right, Shrek 1, 2, 3, 4, or any of the movies that you see, what's happening is that the production values and the ability for this to become even better happens through the combination of man, machine, tools, and the way it's all kind of put together in one composite. And I think that training is not just about the tool set. It is about patience. It's about behavior. It's about accepting mentorship. It's about providing mentorship. It's about bringing freshers and helping them cross the chasm between where what they learned and what they have to do, while they're in the pressure cooker of producing visual effects or animation. And that's where I think we've been massively successful. While we have a large number of people in house, more than 3 times that number have probably left us over these 15, 16 years, and today are part of the credit list of films that are produced everywhere in the world, in Australia, in America, in any corner of the globe. And I think, in a sense, I sometimes joke with friends and family when they ask me, "What do you do?" And I say, "I'm the dean of a university that actually produces world-class talent." So that's the talent story. I think we have a very active engagement with something called the Media Entertainment Skills Council. I'm a governing council member of that, and what we've done is we've tried to simplify skill sets into what are the basic qualification packs. How do we define who is a modeler, etc., etc. There's a ground up story happening out there. You referred to the policy that I'm not going to reach out and take another book from behind me, but I like printed out spiral versions of what we do because you can access it at random. In the policy formulation in India, the task force was comprised of a number of people from government, 7 of us from industry, and a few people from obviously the skill sets and tools and technologies. But the best thing that happened was that while the Ministry of Information Broadcasting was the nodal body to put this together, they immediately broke this up into 4 completely different subgroups. And the subgroup head for skills and entrepreneurship was the secretary from skills and entrepreneurship. And they looked at everything that could make people and come into the jobs of today and tomorrow. They had a group on education. And there we had the chairman, at that time, the chairman of the AICT, Dr. Sahasa Budre, an amazing, amazing leader, who brought a whole lot of new thinking into higher education. You will hopefully see at in a short while when this policy is released, and perhaps even before the policy is released, that the ministry has taken cognizance of what we need to do to make the future of our schooling system creative first. And what we're trying to do there is we've prescribed curriculum for class 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we are going to see in the schooling system, and the pilot's already on in one city and one school, where people can take visual arts as a subject and even at the school stage, drop another subject in favor of visual arts. So you're actually seeding this. Now, obviously, that's a longer term. Skills and entrepreneurship is working on the short term. And then we had industry, innovation, etc. with INB. And because games is such a vast unknown territory with its own government affairs issues, regulation issues, now there are taxation issues, there was the 4th vertical was the games group. Because I think we're very intelligent as Indians, but it's almost humorous to a person that doesn't know this industry that we got some 2,000 games, and with all of our expertise, we can't put them in 3 buckets. What is skill? What is chance? What is gambling? I think on this call, if you gave us the chance and 25 minutes to do that, we can quickly do that. Maybe we'll be 20% wrong, and we can fix it later. But I think we're holding back the growth of our industry in debates between authorities, legislation, and in industry enthusiasts that want to do things without really worrying about whether it falls in the cracks or not. So that's I think the kind of if you like, broad stroke policy formulation that has gone on. We're very satisfied with this. At the CII level, we had a Friday morning call with the 7 people that were there from industry. We almost had 100% attendance for almost 5 months. So we did more than 20, 25 calls, and we were kind of, there's a WhatsApp group sending things back and forth. It was being drafted. The government had a really good consultant that was stayed along with us and was running as quickly as us, but also prompting and prodding us to, hey, we haven't completed this or we haven't completed that. And I think the few of the events that have taken place in the last 2 years have brought the government to make that commitment from the stage to academia, to industry, to the public at large, committing that this will happen. So I think that's there's a big emphasis of skills in that bucket, but to the point of incentives and how to start. And I think in the meanwhile, we went and did a very, very major splash at the Cannes Film Festival last year. This year, we took the government for the first time to Annecy. You know that from a different part of the government, the SEPC from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry have gone and taken an India pavilion for the second or third time at MIPCOM. So we are beginning to put our footprint, to put our tent up in areas that are getting noticed. And I think that's going to add to the understanding of how we become part of the global supply chain. The big idea would be to not only take 10 and 20 and 50 people to these markets, but to create something really amazing in India at a national level that becomes part of a global calendar. Lohita, you know where Busan stands and where Berlin stands and where Venice stands in the film world. And there are other such markets in the television world, the Kids Screen Summit and MIP TV, MIPCOM, and many others. But imagine that today, when we are looking at this becoming the $30 billion giant, that we don't have a place where hundreds or thousands of people in India can come and meet the world at our doorstep. So I think that's one of the things that we are imagining can and should happen, and that will be our next thrust.
One of the most significant tech developments in the last year has been the rise and refinement of AI tools. How has this impacted the industry in both good and bad ways?
So AI is a magic wand. Okay. And I'm sure at birthday parties when you were young, there was a magician who came and did something, you couldn't figure it out. Certainly it happened at my birthday parties. I must also tell you that I wasn't smart enough. I was never the magician. I think it's only in my professional life that I have been able to create a little bit of wizardry and magic in a nice way. So on one hand, AI tools kind of act to turbocharge efficiency, making the animation or visual effects processes faster and smarter. We have been using AI for a number of years in a number of projects across what we do at the mill and MPC and Micros Animation and Technicolor Games. But on the flip side, I think there's a narrative that is working faster, like every innovation, about, hey, this is going to take many jobs away. I spoke to you earlier about the fact that there are 14 different skill sets. Some of them are simpler and more repetitive. Maybe AI will be a way for that to become handled differently. But I do see that it really is going to be much more of an assistant. It's going to be much more of something that helps you do something better rather than the other way around. Now, by the way, these conversations are not new. When I came into this industry rather recently, I only came here 23 years ago. And at that time, Lohita, we were doing 2D animation. So, I was at UTV, which is now Walt Disney India. And we had the great father of Indian animation, Mr. Ram Mohan, whose company we had, brought inside UTV. We had a large school. We had plenty of people on light boxes doing everything on paper and then putting it into a digital final. And then we fell in love with the computer animation. And there's something in the fingers of Indians on a keyboard that does better than anywhere else in the world. And we quickly jumped to becoming a much quicker, faster, better country in that area. But let me just give you an example that when the old Lion King was made, I mean, the one before the last one, which was all 2D and beautiful and animated and squashed and stretched with Disney, they used hundreds of people. I don't know, between 200 and 400. And when we worked on the Lion King 7 years ago, or whatever it was, 5 years ago, it took us 2 years to do the whole thing. And we did it completely computer animation. In fact, we used virtual reality to set the movie with Jon Favreau and Disney. And then we produced the whole thing in CG. We still used 300, 400 people. So those 300 might have been not the ones that we could have used now, but these 300 were the ones that we used. However, when you work on new technology with 300, 400 people, there are more than a few hundred people who are writing the tools, writing the software, doing other things. In fact, more jobs get created when we did computer animation than when the world did hand-drawn animation. And perhaps we should think about AI in a very similar fashion. We should be thinking about AI in a way that when we have to create gazillion pixels to create breathtaking imagery on a canvas that's so vast, we will have to do that using the power of the individual, of the human artistry that will leverage these tools and make that happen, right? So your Microsoft Word has been quite intelligent, right? It corrects your spelling mistakes. It tells you that some stuff has to happen. At a macro level, AI can do a lot of that for you. But there is one limitation. And I define AI in a very quirky fashion. That's the way I am. So, Lohita, you don't know this, but you are AI. Let me tell you why. If Lohita was born in a different country, if Lohita was born to different parents, if Lohita went to a different school, etc., you get the drift, and you had grown up now, and you are the young 25-year-old that you are. Then what is AI? The data inside of you would have been different from the data inside of you today. So AI and generative AI can only use the data which is inside of you. So today, generative AI is Lohita here and now as she is. But if the circumstances were different, then the generative AI would have produced a result that is different from what happens inside you. You get my point?
Yes.
So it's we can leverage it as a company that does water, for example, right? Life of Pi, Pirates of the Caribbean, Harry Potter, you name it. We have plenty of data on how to create the atmospherics around water, right? Storm scenes, tempests, calm waters, Jungle Book, the bear in the back, water. There's not real water, by the way. And you've got this little boy up there, and as the water goes up and down, the interaction between fur and water and human. Wow, that's tough, I can tell you. Now, all of that data you have to feed into something in order for it to produce something. 70% of all generative AI, all AI tools, 70% of all AI tools are about visual imagery as of today. So this is an industry that is going to continue to inform all other industries as to how this is going to happen. I believe when we spoke previously, I might have used this analogy, and I'll do it again and again. What we do in the entertainment industry, in animation, visual effects, and games, is imagery and simulation. And every industry requires imagery and simulation. We would not have produced vaccines as quickly as we did if the tools for imagery and simulation were not available to the biotech community. We would not be able to create as much aerodynamics in the creation of Airbus and Boeing today if the tools for imagery and simulation had not allowed them to do all of that. In Formula One teams go and use wind tunnels in certain places in order to uh, capture and machine learn the air flows in a new design of a car. All of this happens in our industry. Okay, we create an Airbus not to really fly it, but for a movie which is like, where you're landing on the water in the Hudson and you have Sully who's being accused of whatever. Then that Airbus has to be as real as the other one, and it has to have the same dynamics and the same structure. So I believe that when we talk of AI, we should be talking about what I consider the man-machine combination. I prefer to call it augmented intelligence, because it is the intelligence that you're taking out from the data you have, overlaid by the fact that someone is going to use this in ways that are going to be novel and exciting and appropriate for the context and the content that you are creating. And therefore, as humans, our graphic card, our memory chip, what's inside our brain is superior to the latest version of the workstation, laptop, desktop, or whatever that you can create. And I think when we are looking to use AI, like in everything that we do in storytelling, we're looking to mimic the natural world. And the natural world is best understood in terms of its immersion, in terms of its feeling, by the human touch. And therefore, I believe that AI will be a value-adding tool to the human creative process.
What are some of the emerging technologies that will significantly shape the future of not just the animation industry, but the creative industry in general?
Game engines, otherwise known as real time. So the likes of what Unity and Unreal and others bring to the table today is to help you to see something early. If you were a first-time visual effects, if you were making a movie and coming to work with us for the first time in a movie that's heavily visual effects driven, you will have to be a very patient person to understand that you will not be able to see things in a final form until quite late, and you'll have to be saying yes to many things in a very primitive, gray, outline fashion, and then wait for the surprise when it's finally colored and rendered and say, wow, this is fantastic, or oh my gosh. With real time, what's happening is that, as you know, when you play a game, there is no preset movie, right?
Yes.
So what you're doing is that you have an environment. You're going to find, you're a shooter. You're going to find the object, the unnatural creature that you have to meet and shoot. You can go right, you can go left, you can run, you can walk, you can hide, you can jump. What is happening? You are actually creating content for yourself in real time. Those technologies are going to be of great advantage to all kinds of audiovisual creation. And movies and television and so on, as this tool becomes more sophisticated, will use virtual production in order to make sure that everyone can see something as it's being created, sometimes on a prototyping before it's created. So that is just absolutely, it's a common sense will tell us that that's going to take over the whole process of creativity. And therefore, young people should embrace this as soon as possible, whether it's for prototyping, whether it's for learning, or whether it's to help them do the more linear, more traditional things, which take much more time, but they've kind of preset, because with a reference, you can create something faster than if you're just doing it from your imagination. And the challenge today is the director has something in his or her head, and then everybody there is trying to create everything that matches that imagination and either wows them because it's what they wanted or it's better, or else they do it again. So real-time technology and virtual production is definitely one of them. The other is that I think there is going to be a whole lot of pressure on costs. We are seeing that things that in certain countries, there is a quest to move from 20 crore to 60 crore to 100 crore to 130 crores. But in most of the world, the projects that used to be 80 million, 100 million, 200 million, people are looking for a different way to do this. We know that the pressures of from 2019 till today, for different reasons, of recession, of cost, of the world is changing as we speak, and therefore people are looking for a greater simplification of the production pipeline. And simplification is towards, can I do this with the same or better quality but cheaper? So, like everything in life, it's faster, better, quicker, cheaper kind of story will happen in our industry. And therefore, the computer graphics pipeline that people use, the production pipeline, the technology stack, is going to have uh, a whole different set of tools and innovation that will make it happen in a way that's different. Which is why upskilling will be as big as skilling. Because if we're taking, for example, just take India and the example I gave you of the 170,000 people that we need, right? But don't forget, there are probably around 1 million people already in the trade. And as that changes, a good number of them will have to change pretty quickly. The laptop you use, the phone that we use, and the tools that we use do not last more than 3 to 5 years. So anyone that had a paper or a booklet like this 5 years ago is outdated. And that's why I have been mentioning this to state and national governments, that a 5-year policy is now no longer valid. Just like in an organization, your year 3, quarter 4 budget is really quite a number that is, it's unlikely to be the same at that point of time. And I think we need to therefore look at the whole evolution of the creative industry in terms of what's trending and what's working. So between the time that we last spoke, I think some years ago, and today, I would say there are probably 2 revolutions of technology that have taken place. And if you speak to me 2 years from now, then my answer on AI and my answer on virtual production, my answer on skilling and the 14 processes will change. And I think that's probably something that we should take advantage of, because we have the ability, as I said, in India to understand tools, technologies, software, computer graphics, as well or better than anyone in many other parts of the world.
Tell us some of the recent developments with ABAI and how infrastructure has been strengthened in Karnataka.
So, my father used to spend a lot of time in the Lions Club, and all of us have got a side of us which, my assistant in my office works with the dogs, rescuing. Someone does something else, right? So we all have a passion to do something that gives us outside of our conventional workplace something to do. For me, being the lover of arts, I believe that we need to give back to the industry. We need to give back to young people the stuff which is going to be self-serving for our industry. So, ABAI being an NGO, I have steered it for about a decade now. And we've come from being a very small local trade association to becoming a few things. Number one, I think we are the knowledge nugget that helps in articulating policy. And one of the things that we did from our first policy was to talk about skills. And those skills we were able to, with great amount of work, a lot of push, a lot of selling, and a lot of working in 27 cities in Karnataka, we were able to graduate 1,000 or more people from government art colleges, which are free colleges, and have people who are there sometimes because they really didn't have a interest or they couldn't cut it in more conventional education. And there are 1,000 people because actually those those colleges probably had about 5,000 people, but we made it voluntary. It's not in syllabus. So that was a great learning. And I think we brought many of them to our large events, and they got inspired by seeing people who are leaders both in India and abroad, talking to them. We have a very major event called GAFX, which is Games, Animation, and Visual Effects, which now has a footfall of 4,000 people a day. So it's like seeing 8 seminars in a day. And if I was to take the last 10 GAFXs, we had 30,000 people that saw it. So this kind of is the skill story of what made ABI a leader, and the example of what we call the digital art center is a little lab we created in all these government colleges. We're now hoping that we can take this to the private sector. We're hoping that we can take this, with companies CSR monies, to other places. As Technicolor, we ourselves have created a couple of learning labs through our CSR with some very, very credible NGOs, mostly in and around where our studio is. And we do this near our studio for a simple reason, that we like for our employees to have a chance to go and participate and volunteer with these institutions, because you can only grow an NGO when there is a volunteer base. So when the money stops or slows down, the volunteers will kind of take it and scale it into another level. So that's one part of ABI, which was the skill story. And then we wanted to make sure that we benefited the SMEs, the small and medium sector, the startups, right? I mean, this is a startup story. And how will you create IP? I gave you the example of what would you do if you had 2 or 3 co-founders and wanted to start from scratch. And we then came out with a project where we took 2 technologies. Actually, we were supposed to have 5, but the COVID kind of slowed us down in the government interaction with our industry. In these 2 areas, we made a very robust, world-leading center where we have a dome, doesn't exist anywhere, with 200 cameras. So if you came there and stood on the platform, we take 1-click picture of yours, and then later when we clean it up, we create you into a digital human. And that's now, it's the biggest star in Tamil Nadu is doing his second project there. Varun Dhawan did a movie that actually we worked on called Bhedia, where he transitions from boy to wolf. We've got, Yash, and we've got, Mohan Lal. Luckily, almost in all of the key Indian languages, we have one user case just in the last 1.5 years. So that's amazing that we have that ability to do this. And as you know, digital twinning, digital avatars, digital is going to be huge. And that, I think, is something we are happy that we were able to work with the government, convince them to do it, and it happened. There was a lot of controversy when we went to implement this project, because when we used to have consultations with the industry, everyone told the government, why are you doing this? It will not make a profit. And then finally, when my committee and I sat with the government, we said, because it doesn't make a profit is exactly why you should do it. Because if it made a big profit, we would do it. But what it does is, it creates a road. What is a road? A road is a government project done for you to progress the economy. It's our job to buy cars, trucks, conduct business, travel, commute, etc., and build it up. So infrastructure is very expensive in this industry. Storage, render, bandwidth, it's huge. We as a company are in one of India's very well-known tech parks. There are 70,000 people in this park. There are 15, 20 companies. They are world leaders like TCS, Tata Consulting Services, and all the big ones. Do you know we're the only company where our electricity bill is higher than our rent? Why? Computing power. Now, as a large company with a global reach and a global delivery model, we can afford this. But for a small and medium company to come and invest in that infrastructure, the capital equipment, and then this running cost is a double whammy. And therefore, it's extremely important, and we are taking this story further. You are perhaps aware, Lohit, that there is a very well-prepared a proposal at a very high level of consultation in the government, in the central government, for the National Center of Excellence. And that is, been blessed by the associations. We put that together. FICCI and CII together have, done a lot of work to make that happen. It's infinitely larger than the Bangalore one in terms of size and scale and scope. And then we are also encouraging the states to create little centers of excellence, not that little, it's like what we have in Bangalore. But this will be like a string of pearls. And if we have the national center and the states all get their centers and we connect them all up, wow, then you've created this is like having the Euro rail, right? You can go to any country, you can go to any city, and all you have to do is to pay for your seat and boom, you're there. So that's the vision that I brought, through ABI and my committee to the government. And I'm really happy that we were able to implement motion capture and photogrammetry, and we've been able to take that forward. And in spite of very tough times, we're kind of just a little bit head over or underwater in that story. So the advisors were quite right. It's not a huge profit-making business, but it's serving the community. And we have probably incubated more than 25 to 30 companies at ABI. The last one that left had a studio with us for 6 months with 45, 50 people, and now have gone across the road and taken a new space of their own in a tech park for 200 people. But so this is a place where you come and you farm the future industry, and you build the future skill sets. And we've got 11 programs that we wrote, which are high tech, AR, VR, game design, IoT, approach to the metaverse, and they're so impressive that when we went last year, we've tied up and have an agreement with Manipal, where the Manipal Institute of Technology are going to let ABI run all those programs. So they will get the students. Obviously, they are really, really well known, and the certification that they provide is very valuable. But everything from trainer, curriculum, teaching the youngsters, making them come for a week or two to see these practical tools that only we have at ABI, are all our scope of work. So 70-80% of all the delivery of that program will happen from us. Now, how do we scale this? We'll obviously want other universities to do the same thing. We'd like to take this and actually work within other universities, but for a week or two or for a few days, their students will come and be able to touch and feel what they're learning, just in a curriculum. So that's where ABI has come. We're very, very proud of it.
Incredible
Yeah.
journey, and I'm glad to know there's been so much that that has happened since we last spoke. So,
yeah, come and see it. Come and see it.
Yeah, I have. And I'm sure, I think even for our audience, we'll definitely put up a video. It's very relevant.
That'll be great. We're happy to do that. We can actually show you, in a minute or two,
Yes,
what that is. And I think we're looking ahead at scaling this. So we are consulted now, and we have helped STPI to currently approve 2 centers, one in Shillong, where I'm the chief mentor for the Center of Excellence for Animation, and one in FAL, where I'm the chief mentor for a Center of Excellence for AR, VR. And I have other colleagues in the industry who are doing this in other cities with STPI for games, for visual effects, for all kinds of technologies from our field. So I think there is a kind of a groundswell of people that want to do things in this industry and want to make sure that they can take it to places rather than bring people from all over just to 1 or 2 locations, right? In the end, in the beginning, or if you go back 10 or 15 years, you have to be in Mumbai or in Chennai or in Trivandrum or in Hyderabad or something like that. No longer. And I think that's the other development that will happen in time. We'll have hubs all over the country, and people will be able to network and work with each other, and it would be fantastic. So I see that coming.
To conclude, Biren, tell us what's next for Technicolor. We know that you've opened a state-of-the-art facility in Mumbai. What can we expect in the new year?
We were in Mumbai already. We were in Chembur. We used to work with a company called Trace, and we had an option to buy them, and we did. And they were basically, again, like the rest of India, very, very adept at bringing people in, internal academy, and do roto prep and match move, which is the beginning and the simpler skills. And our vision was anything that we then integrate should do everything. So we don't look at Mumbai as Mumbai. We don't look at Bangalore as Bangalore. We look at this as the India platform that we are creating for the world, for our company, and for all our brands. But we then had to look at Mumbai, although we did the deal to have a space a couple of years ago. But everything changed, right? Post COVID, there's a whole new mentality, and I think as a creative first company, we wanted to make sure that the artists that we have should want to work in a place that suits their rhythm, their mood, their ambience. For us, for us as a brand, right? I keep saying this because I've been in branding all my life. Brands are invisible things. You can't write down what a brand is. It's the feeling that you have, your clients have, the feeling that your employees have, your feeling that your associates, your vendors have. So that's really what the brand is. And for us, it's about passion. For us, it's about creativity. For us, it's about the trust and transparency you require to be a service provider, right? I mean, there are a Disney or Electronic Arts or a DreamWorks or whoever. They know exactly who we are, what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and vice versa. And I think it's a little bit like marriage, right? You have to make things work. Normally your hand won't go in the same. You have to make it work like this, and I think that's so. In Mumbai, we said let's change the paradigm a little bit. And while we of course need to have a very uh, set way of security desks, lighting has to be low, they have to see true color on the screen, etc. But in the new world, we have collab spaces. So people can come and you can be having a coffee and doing a review, and then going to a desk and doing the heavy lifting of your work. But there's why do people come to work instead of being at home? In order for you to congregate. And if you remember the old adage, oh, more gets done in near the coffee machine. Hey, that's old thinking. We have rooms that feel like coffee machines now, right? The coffee machine corner. And you have whiteboards and you have places to doodle and you have places to do stuff. We're not exactly as funky, maybe as some companies that are well known to have bean bags and sit everywhere, because it just doesn't fit the kind of work that we do. But we have, I think, the approach to the studio of the future, to ways that people will work. And Lohita, may I also just tell you that out of the thousands of people that work with us, we're very cognizant about the fact we have three generations in this. We have millennials, we have Gen Zs, we have each of these generations have a different mindset from each other. So if you say my HR policy is blah, right, or X or whatever, it will suit 1 or 2 thirds of my universe, but it will not suit 1/3 of them. So you have to be very intentional about the kind of engagement that you want to create in order to make sure that people embrace the brand. They want to work with Micros for animation, with MPC for visual effects, right? For Technicolor games, for the mill in terms of all this cool new experiential stuff that we do, right? We do stuff inside an aquarium. We do stuff inside a mall. We do stuff, the new dome at Las Vegas, right? The Sphere. Okay, I don't know if you saw the opening concert with Bono and U2. All the imagery there, the 16K by 16K, that whole Elvis Presley story, that is kind of also where we've gone through hundreds of videos and made it happen. And to talk about how we talked about AI earlier. So this fantastic MasterCard ad where you see Messi today, but then you see Messi as a kid, which is kind of, you've taken it back, right? Digitally, and created him as a kid authentically, getting onto a plane to go and play his first match. And then you see the young and the old Messi walking, into the football field and walking out of the football field, exchanging that one glance saying, I love football, right? Now, all of this stuff has to be very, very real. And I think where that happens is when people talk, when people look at each other, when they are in the same place. If someone came to me and said, I've been working for home in Guwahati for 6 years, I want to join your company, I would think to myself, how has this guy been mentored? How has he or she been, how did they grow? How did they learn how to, this is the team sport. How do we know their behavioral skills, their interpersonal skills? How do I know that he or she now, actually, if they were working with us in the studio, should have become a lead and be leading about 8 or 9 people? But I don't know all of that because the person's sitting in Guwahati, right? Or I'm just using that as an example. Right? They could be sitting anywhere. And I think from that point of view, a studio is more than a workplace, right? A studio is an inspiration hub. A studio is equipped with state-of-the-art technology, but actually it's a place where you're kind of trying to define and refine and improve the quality of storytelling in a way that is better than the last one that you made. Like we are known for our last. You live by your latest project, right? So if you see this year what's coming out in Transformers, we have the trailer of a phenomenal movie that came out yesterday, which is the first DreamWorks movie, which has been totally done, by end to end. It's called Orion and the Dark. I mean, it's just going to be a big, big thing as it comes out in Netflix and I think in a few weeks from now. And then those are the kind of things we cherish. Those are the kind of things which are so passionate. And how do you celebrate it if you're at home? If there are 200 people that work on a project and you want now to do the celebration of this movie, you can be creative first, but you can be creative first in a studio.
That's incredible, and continue to create magic. You're really an inspiration to the industry, Biren. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and we hope to be in touch.
Thank you very much, Lohita. Good to see you as always, and let's get together and soon and talk about the future again.
Sure, and happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali to you. Thank you.
Bye.